Well, she set the date. Now to see if Australia will come to the party. Julia Gillard, Australia's first female Prime Minister, is vying to become our first popularly elected female Prime Minister. Unless she can do that, her achievement will always be tainted by the route she took to get the top job. I sat down with Prime Minister Gillard soon after she called the election for a chat about budgie smugglers, her old boss, and the bloke who cooks her lamb roasts. Julia Gillard, welcome to the program. Thank you for being on 60 Minutes.
Thank you very much.
Given that Australian politics today is largely a scramble for the middle ground, can I suggest to you that the Labor Party's policy thrust can be summed up in 2 words: Tony Abbott?
I wouldn't agree with that at all. My view about our conversation with the Australian people, about what we'll be arguing for in this election campaign, about what I stand for as Prime Minister, is I believe we can go forward with confidence. I absolutely believe.
Yeah, but Tony Abbott is a gift to you, Prime Minister.
Well, look, I think.
Whereas you are a curse to him. He would have been better to have left the former Prime Minister in place.
I think the gift here is this is a great nation being built by hard work, by millions of Australians, people like my own parents who came here, made a life here, people born here, people who wanted to make sure the next generation, their own children, had opportunities that they couldn't dream of for themselves. That's the gift.
That sounds like vision. It's a long time since I've heard this.
Well, it's certainly enthusiasm and, real optimism for the future. I am an optimist.
Can I go back to Tony Abbott for a moment, though? I mean, Tony Abbott, he's a firefighter, he's a surf lifesaver, he's a cyclist, he wears lycra, he wears budgie smugglers. He's a hell of a man, isn't he?
Well, I've joked before, if I was going to employ a national fitness coach, he'd have the gig, no doubt about that. But being Prime Minister's a different job. And to be Prime Minister, you need to have an understanding of the Australian people, a vision for the future. You need to be prepared to do the hard work, the careful things that keep our economy strong, give people the opportunity for jobs, invest in the future by investing in education, give families the services they need.
You keep bringing me back to policy and I keep going back to Tony, because people who know more about body language and behaviourism than I do say that in another life you two could have been really good mates. Witness your jousting on television.
Look, I obviously, in a personal sense, wish Tony well. And the great thing about election campaigns in this country, it's a bit like our sporting contests. I mean, you can go to the footy together and barrack for different teams and, still have a joke at the start of the game and a joke at the end of the game. But I don't endorse what Mr Abbott plans for the country, which is taking us back.
I thought he was planning pretty much what you're planning now.
Oh, no. I mean, Mr Abbott's, what he's about, back to work choices.
No, he said that isn't the case anymore.
Well, a lot of language to camouflage intention here, but Tony Abbott's always been in favour of work choices and he'd take Australians back to the worst aspects of it.
Can I talk about what I think is probably the most sombre issue in Australian politics, though not a political issue because both parties support it, and that is the war in Afghanistan. And I would think, I can't put myself into your shoes, but I would think that the saddest and most heartbreaking thing for a Prime Minister to do is to attend the funeral of young Australian soldiers who've died so far from home in a war that most of us don't understand.
Oh, look, absolutely. As Prime Minister, I've attended 3 funerals for Australian soldiers, and since then, of course, we've lost Nathan Bewes as well, and his funeral will be relatively shortly. As Prime Minister, I ring the families and talk to them on the phone, and then I have the opportunity to be with them at the funeral. Oh, look, I'm as frank as I can be, and what I say is, there are no words. I mean, if there were words that could take away that degree of pain, then I'd say those words, but there are no words. People are going to miss their son, their husband, their brother for the rest of their lives.
But do you sincerely believe that this commitment is worth it? That this is a winnable war, that this isn't another Vietnam, that we won't go the same way as the Russians and the British and the French did in that country?
I believe this commitment is worth it. Afghanistan has been a safe haven for terrorists, and those terrorists have taken Australian lives in Bali, in 9/11, and our troops are over there. Our wonderful, wonderful people in the Defence Force are over there making a real difference. And when I go to the funeral of soldiers, what strikes me is the bravery of the families as they deal with that loss and tragedy, but also the bravery because many of them say to me that the best way of honouring their loss is for us to stay the course. But this is dangerous work, but we do have to see the job through.
I'm looking for policy differences here, and apart from some fine-tuning, I'm not quite sure what I see as the difference between your asylum seekers policy and the present one of the Liberal Party.
Well, I think that's a perceptive remark, because I think despite the public debate, and I called for this debate, so I welcome it,
sure.
but despite the public debate sometimes looking like it's pretty fast and furious, I think beneath that there are some clear points of agreement. I think Mr Abbott is agreeing with me we need a regional framework. I think he's agreeing with me we need a regional processing centre.
And I think you're agreeing with John Howard that maybe Nauru mightn't be such a bad place after all.
No, we've got to remember the Pacific solution, which led to Nauru, wasn't regional, it wasn't agreed, it was one-off by the Howard government, and it consequently wasn't going to be sustained for the long term, and overwhelmingly, the people processed on Nauru ended up in Australia.
Let me read something I know you will have read, Mark Latham this week in the Fin Review. Julia Gillard knows that much of the opposition to asylum seekers in Australia is driven by racism. Indeed, what does it say about Australia when 40 years after the abolition of the White Australia policy, our most powerful vote-changing issue is a handful of leaky boats bobbing away in the Timor Sea, 3,500 miles from Western Sydney?
Well, I don't...
It's not a bad point.
I'm not really accepting of that analysis. I can understand why people are concerned when they see, boats on the seas to our north. I can understand why people are concerned. And I don't think having that concern makes you a racist or makes you intolerant or irrational or any of those things.
You mean that political correctness should not impede the debate?
No, I don't think it should. I think the same is true for people who want to say, well, I'm concerned about children in detention. I don't think anybody should label them as bleeding heart and soft on border protection. Let's get rid of the labels. Let's have the actual discussion. And I think we are having that.
I know that you won't reveal the details of the so-called secret pact, but can I put to you the proposition that the three people who were in that room were elected by us, the people, and even while they were in that room were being paid by us, the people? Is this really an honourable silence, or is it a bit disconnected from the rights of we the people?
Well, I gave my word. I gave my word that I would keep that discussion confidential. I'm going to honour my word. Some people might be critical of that, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to honour my word.
Can you then assure the Australian people that you didn't break your word to Kevin Rudd?
Well, I'm not in any way, shape or form, including through playing rule-in, rule-out games, going to go to what happened in that discussion, which I pledged to keep confidential. I've given my word. I'm going to keep my word.
Politics can be cruel. It can be marvellously Shakespearean. I would be wrong to say that those of us who observe it don't enjoy it, and we quite often enjoy the blood sport. I didn't enjoy his tears, and I suspect you didn't either.
Oh, there was nothing about any of this. The leadership change, nothing about it that was easy for Kevin Rudd or for his family, and we saw that pain on display.
How did you cope with that pain?
Oh, I was concerned for him and felt as a human being that pain coming from him and clearly from his family too. This has been a very, very difficult time for Kevin Rudd and his family. I talked to him about the future. He wanted to take some time with his family. He's done a bit of that. If the Australian people extend to us the trust to be re-elected, I'll certainly be saying to Kevin Rudd that I want him to be part of the team as a senior cabinet minister.
Okay, only one more question on this subject. Most Australians these days are not members of trade unions. Yet it did seem the unions exercised a disproportionate influence in saying who rules the ALP.
I think the decision here under our system is one for the Labor members of Parliament. They're men and women who make up their own minds in good conscience.
Are you tough enough to stand up to these people, if you need to?
I think
You're not their creature.
I think I've shown across my political life that I make my own decisions, I make my own choices. I've been Workplace Relations Minister, and when I was Workplace Relations Minister, there would be many days that I would open the pages of the newspapers to find trade unions decrying what I was doing.
Hey, Australia's a matriarchal society. There's no way I'm suggesting you can't be feminine and tough, because Australian Sheilas are tough, aren't they?
Well, I think I've got the capacity to be a strong person. I've got the capacity to lead. I've got the capacity to make tough decisions.
But not as your mum hoped to become a Margaret Thatcher.
Well, I think...
Aren't mums great?
I think Mum was perhaps recalling about Margaret Thatcher that she did have a capacity to lead, and
she was tough on the Welsh miners.
Well, she called...
Mum wouldn't forgive that.
No. She wouldn't be admiring of the individual policy choices of Margaret Thatcher.
Nicely put. I've left the good bit till last. Your partner, Tim Matheson. He obviously does great hair. How else will he contribute to your political machine?
He'll contribute by being...
He's a very engaging man, I must say.
Well, I obviously think so. He'll contribute by being personally supportive of me as I go through the election campaign. The great thing about Tim, or there are many great things about him, but one great thing about him is he follows enough of politics that if I'm at home and I want to get something off my chest, then he understands it, but he's not so captivated by it that, we can't just sit round, relax, talk about personal things, family things, human things, and switch off for a while.
And is he committed to keeping the fruit bowl full? That's a cheap shot.
Well, he's certainly committed to making some great food for me to eat. Roast lamb's his specialty.
And just finally, this election campaign. 5 weeks is a long time. Will we be bored?
Well, I won't be. And
you're looking ready for it.
No, I'm feeling fine. I'm ready to go. I'm enthusiastic about it. I certainly won't be bored, because I'm never going to get bored about talking about what takes this nation forward.
Maybe I'll get to talk to you in another 5 weeks.
Maybe you will. Let's
Julia
hope so.
Gillard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to talk.
Hello, I'm Amelia Adams. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for our brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.